The next speaker is Shohei Shigematsu. He graduated in 1995 of the Kyushu Fukuoka Japan University and the Verlag Institute of Amsterdam. He joined OMA in 1998. He has directed the office at New York since 2006 and became partner in 2008. His designs for cultural spaces include the National Museum of Fine Arts at Quebec, the Fine Arts Center at Miami Beach, and collaborations with artists such as Kai Guo Qiang, Marina Abramovic, and Kanye West. Today, Shigematsu is designing projects in San Francisco, New York, and Miami, as well as a complex for multiple uses in Santa Monica. We have the maquette exposed at the Chapultepec forest. His commitment include work in all over the world, such as the new Center for Bogota, Colombia, urban water management strategy after Sandy hurricane at New Jersey. Let's welcome Shohei with a round of applause.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm very honored to be speaking here. I'm the only Asian speaker in the whole list, but I live abroad for 20 years, so I'm a kind of hybrid. Anyway, it's a design week, Mexico, so I would like to start from speaking about design in relationship to my background and also to economy to some degree. This is the GDP decline of Japan after post-war. It has a steady decline marked by major economic crises. This is a superimposition of my life to that graph. So you can clearly see when I was born, when I attended university, when I became a partner, it all coincides with the major economic crisis. So somehow I'm doomed to live with the downturn or economic crisis. So I actually investigated the effect of a downturn to architecture and urbanism at GSD and also at Columbia University. In short, when the economic indexes goes down, basically human indexes goes up, like feeling and thinking. So one of the typology that gets built the most during the recession is, for example, religious architecture, like this, because of course you lose faith in money, then you have to find something else. But also it's not a secret that a lot of invention has been made during the recession, and also a lot of architecture and urbanism manifestos were written during the recession. As you can imagine, when there is no work for architects, you can rather concentrate on writing really good books. Here I would like to talk about the relationship of design and economy. This is architecture from 60s. There's a sense of gravity, sense of edge, sense of materiality, sense of vision. This is one of the mainstream architecture in Japan after 25 years of recession. No materiality, no edge, no color, no nothing. Which a lot of people refers to it as coming from a Japanese sensitivity or minimalism in the culture, but I actually think that's not really true. But this is a product of really long time recession and architects being taken away the right to actually express itself in the bigger urban projects in Japan. What I'm trying to say here is that in my parents' age or in Rem's age, upturn and modernization was always maybe coupled, and downturn and demodernization was coupled. But in our age right now, this is far more complex. Even downturn and modernization happens, and upturn and demodernization happens. So we have to be very flexible in monitoring the changes that are happening in the world. So which I'm trying to do through our office, which I want to show you today. This is just an anecdote, but this is SML Excel, as you know, written by Rem Koolhaas. I give a lot of lectures in universities, and often Dean actually asks students, oh, who has SML Excel, thinking that everyone has it, but in recent cases, there are a lot of students don't have it. And which is, it's, as you can imagine, it's 20 years after it was published, so it's becoming almost like a classic thing. And that's what I'm trying to fight against here as an OMA. I don't know why the screen is cut here, if you could fix. I'm using the new format, not the old format. So OMA, as you know, started as a collective from AA with Elia and Rem, etc. And Rem, basically when Rem started to take over the office, I think OMA became almost an incubator of all these successful offices. So as a whole, it was still collective as an influence, but basically Rem maybe overspawned too many young architects. Now, of course, that's coming into an effect to OMA, where every competition, international competition, we have to fight against our ex. So now our system is kind of evolving a little bit further. So each partner, we have 9 partners, including myself, somehow have our own basically studio and developing our own architecture, acquiring architecture, developing architecture, but as a whole, creating this kind of multifaceted entity. So this is a taxonomy of what we are doing in OMA, New York. We have about 90 people from art, world, fashion, mixed use, workspace, residential. And also we're doing a lot of public space. So bridge, I will show you. The post-Sandy hurricane resiliency project, Bogota, new government district, and new city center in Toronto, for example. And also we are now working on Facebook new campus. This is in Menlo Park in Silicon Valley. This is the first campus, second campus, headquarter made by Frank Gehry, and now Facebook is crossing this abandoned rail to the south and acquired this huge land that we're doing a master plan and public space design, as well as a new office, third generation office, where for the first time they're going vertically higher than 2-story high. This is still a master plan phase, so we're now developing the new office, which unfortunately I can't share. But again, a lot of public space design. Since I'm in Mexico, I of course couldn't help showing this. So 2006, 2007, we were asked to design toward the Bicentenario. So it was, of course, Mexico was moving towards the Bicentenario anniversary. This is a mapping of the high-rise. Of course, Asia is still leading in its height. Latin America and Europe relatively lower. As you know, all the high-rises are capitalizing on the Chapultepec Park, and this site was also in Las Lomas, in the residential area, in a way facing the park, but it was still a residential area. That, of course, somehow was one of the first mistakes. But the site was quite small here, and as you know, there was an existing modernist architecture. And the site was so small that the footprint was really restricted to this size, almost quite, basically it was 40 by 40 meter. So in order to get the FAR that the developer wanted, the tower would have became like 400 meter tall. So we said, why don't we grow horizontally at the datum of the surrounding buildings, or only towards the park? So we pulled this point towards the park, made this shape that are almost like a 2 pyramids, one upside down put together. One is maybe traditional, one is maybe visionary. So you can see how in the center it grew and created this kind of ambiguous relationship to the existing city fabric. So in the backside, the side story is that this side was on the opposition party, so we didn't want to grow. In the park side, that time the mayor party was in position, basically power, so we basically grew only to the park side. Anyway, these are the kind of views. And all the floor plans were quite, let's say, a standard floor plate, but of course it changes every floor. And there was a sky lobby at the center. We have been working internally and started to call this building a pregnant building. So we decided to actually conceive a child, which was a void. because the floor plate became so deep, we had to bring natural light in. So we made this atrium that is almost like a funnel through the building. One has a view to the city, one has a view to the park. So there is no flat space in this atrium, but it's connecting the two sides and bringing natural light into the deeper part of the office. So it became almost like an object, or let's say a child inside the belly. This is view down to the park. The structure was such that the core and this straight part was quite robust, and this basically the belly part was quite a lightweight structure. We used a so-called cable structure, so it's a series of very thin cable-like columns that are mobilized as structure, and it's about 30 centimeter diameter to make the building look less like a typical big earthquake-resistant building, but more refined and almost like a veil-like building. And as you know, after it was announced, the building was redrawn in their favor in the newspaper. They redraw your building, which is a little bit strange, and of course made these kind of negative campaigns. We even attended the negative campaign, a kind of beautiful, poetic, anti-high-rise protest in the park. And then, as you know, it died. And of course, it was a perfect form to inform that it was the end. And as you know, though, what happened is that somehow our building, I thought it was under construction when I came back to Mexico City. But as you know, it's only the half was realized. And I even know the name for it. But please don't attack the architect, because I hate my building to be called Doritos after. But yes. But in a way, you know, a lot of sculpture, beautiful sculpture without any part, like a missing parts. This triggers more imagination about the building. So I think it's actually quite a poetic outcome. But we are back here and we would love to do something here. Landscape and architecture. As you know, the High Line became one of the most popular destinations in New York, much more than any buildings. Since then, as you know, the High Line was regenerated one after another in different municipalities. You name it. This comment by Dylan Scofidio actually triggered me to really think how we would do it. Of course, the High Line was very successful because it was a reappropriation of the existing infrastructure. So they didn't have to over-design so much. But we are in the second wave, or we are the basically we are basically the High Line effect people. So we have to actually acknowledge that we have to rebuild High Line-like structure from zero. So this project came into the office, which was Bridge Park in Washington, D.C., connecting D.C. side to the Anacostia, which is a low-income neighborhood. So typically, any bridge, you have a gentle slope to make a clearance under. This time, we basically made an X so that the both side actually goes crossing and creates a symbolic plaza in the center. So when you're coming up from one side, basically you see the gateway, and you can also have a program underneath the other wing, and then creating a symbolic plaza in the center. What it does is that you can actually go and continue going up to the bridge. You don't have to go to the other side, but you can go up and have a very great view back or to the DC. This is also acknowledging L'Enfant's famous urban planning in DC, which has a series of skewed X's that in the intersection of X, you have a great architecture, great public space. So it's almost making that X vertical and having a program activity around the X. like performance space, cafe, etc. So it's more like a Rialto bridge, but more a kind of a funky Rialto bridge. Here you have also activities, cafe, also water filtration, and also structurally it actually works. This is a water filtration. It's so close to Pentagon that we just simulated how it looks from the Air Force One. Of course, DC is a city of monuments, so we thought hard how we could put our very skinny X into the monument. So we took advantage of what it means in X. Of course, it means 10. So we basically made this $10 bill, but who uses cash nowadays? Anyway, innovation. So this is something also I'm confronting with. I'm invited to so many conferences that are called innovation. So we did a little research in the office. The rise of the word innovation starts around 70s. Instead, the word called invention actually goes down and creates a cross, which is a transitional point. This is where I was born. I'm not saying I triggered this transition, but I'm saying it was around early 70s, basically this started to happen, which I find it a little bit bizarre that invention is maybe less acknowledged by innovation, which is of course, an ambiguous term. So from a buzzword to buzzkill, it's one of the most overused words in USA right now, innovation. As you know, even White House had the innovation American Innovation section. I think he's now gone, but anyway, it reached even to the White House. Every university is making innovation lab, making a building for it. Of course, the hype continues. This is the first innovation district. I didn't know this, but it's in Barcelona, around this roundabout. This is not an Apple headquarters. This is a roundabout in Barcelona. It's the first official innovation district. So the word innovation is also becoming physical, and we have to deal with it. The reason why I'm talking about it is we're doing a project in Boston, in Innovation District in the Bay, in the water area. So this is an existing fabric that attracted a lot of startups. So since then, somehow someone started to call this area Innovation District. Can you imagine innovation with vast parking lots? But anyway, then now the developer, of course, started to come in and capitalizing on the notion of the naming of the Innovation District. So our site was at that border of the new development versus the old. And it was in front of the park. So what we did is to subdivide the building into half and continue the park up to the building and cut the building in half. So you create this kind of terraces that faces the water in the park. What it does is that in our notion, this part attracts maybe more startups and more, let's say, innovative thinking tenants. Here, more established tenants. So you also can have a segregation between the, let's say, up and coming and established. And have this kind of winter garden and terraces that overlooks the park and the water like this. What it does is also to really make a volumetric relationship to the old ones. So we are at the border, as I said. So the lower portion actually make a relationship to the old and the new one to the new. So the upper one to the new. So you have this kind of dramatic separation at the boulevard and here. We are the upper mass have a belt truss above from the core and hanging all the volume up. So there is no column appearing here. So that you have this sense of floating. Talking about the workspace, we did the architecture studio, architecture, art and planning studio extension at Cornell University. We were the third architect after Stephen Hall and Barker and Leibinger, in a way, failed. This is quite rare for OMA because typically we start and someone takes over. So this is the art squad of Cornell. Tom's building is somewhere here that he showed. The architecture, art, and planning was housed in different buildings, so they weren't maximizing the potential of interdisciplinary study, and also they didn't really like each other. And also this north side, although it's facing a very natural, interesting nature gorge, like a canyon, it wasn't really used as a kind of pleasant public space, and all the focus was on this art squad. So our idea was to reunite the college as one, but also to create some kind of plausible public space on the north. So we decided to actually make a building, or make a place, not even a building, informed by existing buildings lines. So the building is defined by all the lines that are already existing in the campus. And creating a mini art squad in the north side, it's like a bridge-like element that connects these buildings, but as well as creating a column-free, flexible space that spans over existing road with a cantilever, 48 feet, about 15-meter cantilever, and which creates a bus stop underneath. In order to achieve this, we had to mobilize the trusses, so we had to use all this perimeter truss, but also internal truss, which of course, if you use a conventional truss, it will be an obstacle to have flexible circulation. So we analyzed the moment diagram of this truss, and then started from a Vierendale structure to gradually become a truss, so that you basically, in the center where you have more circulation, we kept the Vierendale so that people can pass without hitting their head. So you can see this traveling truss from Vierendale to conventional truss also here. So the students can realize the forces that are occurring in this building. So this is the building inside, how it's inhabited. Students are very good at using, of course, the architecture as their part of the, domestication is pretty intense. Playing with it. This guy invented the hammock like a second day after it opened, and then grew into kind of creating his own empire using the truss and make everything kind of attached to the truss. It's quite smart. Playing, transportation. In order to do that, we brought all the infrastructure, data, electricity, natural light, chilled beam, everything onto the ceiling, so it's quite high-tech, as opposed to the floor, which is just a radiant heat floor, so it's quite low-tech, to ensure the future flexibility can be achieved. So you can see the contrast of quite a charged ceiling versus very elemental floor. There was another volume which is a dome. It's more like a landscape-like element, concrete dome that intersects to the upper plate, as you can see, which provides the auditorium and the crit space under. So it's creating a completely different world to the steel structure, but here more concrete structure, creating exterior landscape-like situation like here, also here. So it's quite a big contrast. Also the construction sequence was very contrasting. Of course, the steel structure was much more smooth and on schedule. Of course, the concrete was a big deal, mobilizing a couple of concrete casting cars overnight, casting the entire dome. We couldn't fail, so it was a very sensitive operation. Because of this kind of topography we created, of course, it attracted some kind of more urban activities that didn't exist in the campus immediately. But of course, we had to. These guys started skateboarding even before we took pictures, so we had to say no. But here, people were skeptical. It's a very cold weather here, so. Skeptical about the covered exterior space, but now they're using it quite well. You can go down to the auditorium on the dome from the studio above, and basically the auditorium is on the mound. So you have a panoramic view of the surrounding. It's a triple glazing, so you have a complete silence, although there is a street next to it, and you have a view. and ensure certain darkness so you can do a lecture, even the surrounding open, and also other activities. This is Howard Milstein, the main donor. He was at the board of the entire university, not only architecture school. So he wanted to convert this auditorium into the boardroom of the entire university at the middle point of the construction. So we had to retrofit the boardroom to this auditorium. This was an existing boardroom they were using, very conventional, very difficult to use, and also not so interesting. So we looked at all the current technologies of seats, of course, individual seats, etc. So we came up with these seats that are like a business class seats that has electricity, voting system, microphone. It's all integrated, and swivel. You can swivel, so you can actually do this kind of typical configuration or that kind of configuration. But the problem was that the board meeting only happens twice a year. And this space was actually, of course, conceived for the auditorium for the students. So we had to think how we could have both of them coexisting. So what we found is this system that you can store the chairs under the floor, raised floor. And by electricity, basically the chairs come out like this. Every, 2 times per year. We thought it was really interesting, like basically the zombies of board members kind of coming out of the ground 2 times a year. So this is the typical configuration. This is a dome where you have a crit space, flexible wall that subdivides the crit space so that you can have simultaneous crit. As I said, there's a bus station here, so a lot of people who are not familiar with architecture education are also waiting here and have a peek into the architecture crit. So this is a very interesting moment that we discovered. Bathroom is also designed. It's a single stainless steel ribbon that has an intersection of 2 genders. So you're always sitting next to a different gender, but you never realize. Even the signage is quite ambiguous, X, Y, and XX. It's like the gene information. So you're a little bit confused which way to go. And these are the walls. So it's full height, so you don't hear the sound nor smell, but you're always next door to the different genders, so you maintain a certain level of tension. Museum extensions. I've been dealing with a lot of extensions. Started in 2001 for Whitney extension in New York. This was an infamous one by Michael Graves. And also this is another infamous one by ours, which got canceled. And then, as you know, Renzo Piano took over. Although even Renzo failed in Upper East Side, so they had to build in downtown. There's a conspiracy theory that OMA and Renzo Piano is the same office because OMA always starts and Renzo Piano takes over. I'm doing an extension at Albright Knox Gallery in Buffalo. Beaux-Arts building, 60s extension, beautiful extension by Gordon Bunshaft, SOM. This is creating a wall to the park that is designed by Olmsted. Our initial competition scheme was to basically break this courtyard open, creating almost like a bridge that the Olmsted designed and make a gateway into the park, and creating a gallery above, which was heavily criticized by the preservation community, which we agreed. So we are changing the site, but it's going on. So anyway, we are saying that I'm dealing with a lot of extensions that have modern architecture. Now we won a competition to do an extension of new museum. It's going to be as big as the existing Sana building. I can't share the design, but I can only tell you that it's going to be a very interesting relationship like this or like this. This is also an extension we did in Quebec. So the Quebec is a capital of Quebec in Canada. So this is a battlefield park where French and English fought. This is the existing museum. which was always in the park. They acquired a new site that faces the new city's boulevard next to the church. So it's the first time that the museum will have an address to the city. So in order to acknowledge the history and the context, we thought that not only the art extension happens, but all three entities that are at this site, park, city, art, all extend at the same time by peeling off the ground. So you can see that the park continues over the building, topography as a topography, and the city slips under, and art becomes a catalyst between the park activity and the city activity. The three gallery boxes are pure translation of their need. This is the how it's built. This is a former prison that are connected by the, they're using it as a museum, of course, and then connected by the tunnel, and then we are connected to the church, which will be also be used by the museum in the future. So it's a building that is simultaneously connected to prison and church, which is, of course, a very interesting building. So this is a new address to the city. It's intersecting to the church. The entire ground floor is almost designed as an extension of the street or plaza or event space, because in Canada, the museum has to raise their funds by themselves. Half of their funds has to be raised. So they use the building as a vehicle to actually make revenues. So we had to make a column-free space so that any type of event could happen. So this is looking back to the city side, how this column-free space entrance is a mixture of the park on the left and then the church's wing intersecting and creating this abstract silhouette of the church. This was at the opening of Justin was there. She's from Quebec. I'm calling it Justin as if I know him, but anyway. Was an owner. As you see, the ground floor space is quite active, almost like a plaza. They do a lot of night events too. Circulation is coupled with a lot of program. It's a very only kind of curved elements in the building that creates a spiral, because people are coming from existing building, existing museum side, and the new entrance side. So this is a moment that they get mixed. This is a grand stair. I mean, Instagram is quite interesting to actually observe how the post-occupancy of your building is. So I collected only the one that is worth seeing. We have series of windows from galleries that captures the nature and extreme climate there. Also, of course, the roof of one box. Because it's stacked, you can create a continuity from the inside sculpture gallery to the outside sculpture. And this is a stair window that sticks out to the park side so that you can go out from the building and then basically get a visual cleanser and again immersed in the park before you go to the third floor. The facade is glass, triple layered, the textured glass, fritted glass, and the visual glass, so it has a sense of depth. Also creates a different appearance, of course, capturing different lights of the day. And because of the textured glass, it looks like an ice palace during the winter. This is showing how facade could shift. Creative economy. This, of course, design conference is part of this creative economy. Creative economy is now one of the growing economy, as you know. You can monetize it. It's $630 billion. So, of course, once something creative gets monetized, people start to use that as a vehicle for business. Of course, creativity is something that maybe you can fundamentally not monetize. But anyway, I'm also wondering how this trend is going. So this is the Creative City Network in UNESCO. There are 116 designated creative city. In last 3 years, they gave so many designation over last year was like 45 cities. So I started to wonder, yes, every city can be so creative. Then in 2025, there will be like 420 creative cities in the world if you project. So everyone becomes creative. So it's similar to the design, something that is, of course, more profound than something that you cannot entirely measure gets used like this, which worries me. And where it's coming from, maybe it's coming from a textbook like this made by Lord Cultural Resource, like a soft power. So basically excludes architecture, basically create a textbook for municipalities to do this and that to put your city onto the world map and also have economic return of this and that. So of course everyone buys into this kind of textbook. So there's a flattening, obsolete nature of a lot of events, and one is, which I did a study at Columbia University, perennial, which is art events. This is the amount of biennials in the world currently is 196. What that means is that in given months, like 2017, September, there are 19 biennials happening at the same time in the world. So you know what that means, that there are, of course, limited amount of art and curators and any things. So this kind of explosion of art events are also quite alarming in a sense. The visitors to a typical gallery, basically art museum, is now exceeded by, of course, art events. So my theory is that this is a little bit of a post-Bilbao effect, I think. Of course, in 90s, a lot of municipalities spent money to iconic architecture. Now that maybe is overwritten by a little bit by soft power. Basically, of course, uses a tent as a main venue, which is a very interesting contrast, I think. And this, I'm not saying this is a good or bad. I'm just observing and as an architect thinking how to deal with it. Of course, the experience in art events, as you know, is very also flat. In the city of Miami Beach, where the Art Basel is a home of Art Basel in the US, we did the event space, which is also, I think, part of the Art Basel effect. It's a Faena, it's an Argentinian developer who made the Puerto Madero single-handedly one of the most expensive real estate by making this Philip Stark design hotel. He came to the center of Miami Beach at that time, which was not so active. He bought the existing hotel and then built the condominium tower by Norman Foster. We were asked to do 3 cultural venues across the street, Collins, which is not on the beach side, but on the creek residential side. And as you know, who had been to Miami Beach, most of the activity happens on the beach side, so this side is a little bit of a difficult site to even bring people down. Our initial model, sketch model, as you cannot maybe believe, but this is a model we made. So this is like 4 equal volume rather than 1 big one and 2 equal volumes. So we wanted to subdivide this into smaller volumes so that it fits into the neighborhood. And also made this one a little bit circular so that it responds to the arc that the original hotel had, but also claims brutally the center of the entire Faena complex. So it's a building that is 2 volumes that are attached, so it looks like 2 buildings, but actually a single building. So this is how it's done. This is an existing preserved hotel. This is a mechanical parking, Norman Foster condominium, and the existing hotel. So it's an event space, effectively, with 1 black box and 1 classical plan, like a round plan. And also round one has a dome, so it has a very distinct experience between the 2, but you can use it as a single space, or you can subdivide into different space, different venues, so that you can have simultaneous events. Whenever I show this picture of building, everyone says, oh, you were inspired by Pantheon. Yes, to some degree. Who doesn't? But anyway, this Oculus is not only for that, but you know, in order to bring a big art or cars, we couldn't find any. We didn't want to make the elevators bigger, etc. So we are actually using this Oculus as a loading point also. And there's a balcony here to go up, and this was an event, so you can actually use the balcony to look down, but also in some events using the balcony itself as a area for performance. So you can subdivide the buildings into two, so one black box and one domed and round. The black box one have a big window to the creek side, having using the kind of nature as a backdrop for an event, and have some sense of view connecting the ocean side to the creek side. There is a third event space, which is a lobby, which is like mirroring the dome, which is almost like a pit, where you can also do third events. So effectively, this building is a machine of events. You can do 3 simultaneous events. In order to create a plausible arrival, we cut the building and then created this covered exterior arrival space with a water feature, which could also use as a public space. In order to achieve this cantilever, we mobilized the, again, skin for that, which is a series of arches that sustains a cantilever that are tied back to the ground. And they're coupled with anti-hurricane grid that is required in Miami Beach that creates this pattern about, it's all almost like 400 different window types. In order to achieve these different window types, we casted these positive windows. It was almost like an artwork, and then took the windows away. So you can see it has this kind of sense of organic appearance, like a seashell or palm tree, like very close to the beach. Circulation is around the perimeter. There are a lot of events that happened, Madonna concert, to culinary event, to product launch, to art event, wedding. And then the performance, the inaugural performance was with collaboration with Pam Tanovitz, the choreographer in New York, and we made this huge disc that is a stage, but people can actually sit inside the stage. But also one effect we did was to, when we were under construction, a lot of people liked this view from the main event space looking to the fenestration, which of course is not possible considering, of course, the use. So we had to build the internal wall, but I remembered it. So we basically calculated the sun path and the shadow that is created on the opening day, and then we project mapped the movement of the shadow onto the space, and then projected that as if there was no internal wall. I don't have much time left, but we also do a lot of exhibition design. This was the one we did in the Met, which was about how the boundary between man-made and machine-made in fashion industry is blurred. Now the pret-a-porter and ready-to-wear and haute couture is basically completely blurred because a lot of haute couture is actually using machine, a 3D printer and laser cutter to actually create more complex object like this. Like this is Iris van Harpen, the Dutch designer. So typically, the fashion design exhibition is all about coherence, basically same designer, single era, single culture. So you basically have some kind of intuitive narrative, but here it was all about the difference, but also about making a connection, comparing to the man-made versus machine-made. So it was a very complex brief. So I thought instantly that people had to really focus on the detail of the garments. The site was also unique, which was in Lehman Wing at the very end of the Met to the park. It's a modern extension done in 60s by Kevin Roach. I didn't know this wing until we were hired by this project. But anyway, it's a very strange wing. As you know, Met's experience is predominantly very classic, like this, the entrance, and also the medieval court, just before this Lehman wing that we were supposed to do the exhibition. In short, this was a place where you have natural light. So we had to block the entire natural light by creating almost like a cathedral inside the building, so which we call it the ghost cathedral. So it's a building inside a building. So we used the scaffolding as a really light structure and basically wrapped it with a membrane, and then conceived this series of pockets that are exhibition spaces. And we use this scrim that are basically integrating basically text and also projection. And scrim is something that you project from the front, it becomes very solid. But if you project the light from behind, it becomes very transparent. I'm going fast, but as you can see, you see the juxtaposition of very rough scaffolding and very refined membrane. So it's a white wall, white exhibition space, but it has a very incredible depth of translucency. Also, one of the critique I had to the recent fashion exhibition was its overload of flat screen and media use, because it takes away your effort to actually confront really to the garments itself. So we decided to use no media. And if we are using the media, it's highly integrated to architecture, but also only showing not a catwalk picture, but only showing the detail of the garments. So this is mapped to fit in this poche. Just show you a little bit and end with the pattern of the Chanel dress is projected up to the dome as in like a Sistine Chapel. So this is how we integrated the projection only to fit within this architecture and then only show the detail of the dress. Anyway, you get the idea. This is this is what I confront often, a very successful meeting that the client is basically not even taking the sunglasses off. But we had to also design a gala for Anna Wintour. So we designed this centerpiece, which was given to a production company, which of course failed. But what was achieved was also in relation to this double spiral, red carpet that we designed actually was used, which was basically two different colors, kind of winding like a double helix, which was heavily criticized by the media that it's so distracting because you have three colors. But I don't think so, because as you can see, a lot of celebrities actually naturally stood in this kind of circular white zone. This one is almost perfect. Also this one. Anyway, defending. I just want to end with one last note. This is another observation. This is city of Tokyo marked by different color. It represents different kind of type of atmosphere, different type of neighborhood. So it used to be very diverse in its experience, which you compare to the table, dinner table, it's more like a la carte style, sharing dishes, each other, conversation, stimulator, etc. But now there are so many buildings that have similar ingredients. This is two recent ones in Japan, has offices, museum, hotel. You know, it's exactly the same ingredients, exactly the same size, almost like a formula, which we are calling it the bento box development. So what used to be very animated now becomes a very kind of predictable experience in the city, like a bento box. So no matter how much as an architect trying to design the very unique mixed-use buildings, of course, if the ingredients are not changing, of course, there is a limitation to distinguish itself. So as an architect, we are making sure that we also be involved in the programmatic discussions, etc. So that's the end, and I'm really hoping to engage OMA into Latin America and especially in Mexico. So hope we can have more exchange afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your incredible work, your mind, and your humor. We appreciate that. You still have some time. I don't know if you would like to talk about the project in Bogota and Louisville, your social projects.
Social project. Yeah, I have Michael. Well, I think one of the focus we do is also to cultivate our own interests. So I'm doing a food research about food industry in GSD, and from that, cultivating our own interests actually spawns a new typology, new architectural typology, because we are basically diving into a deeper understanding of the system. So Food Hub is one in Louisville that is almost like a community center based around the program of food production and supporting the local community. So that's something that is very important for us, that as an architect we just don't wait for the client to come, but we make a proactive move to engage ourselves into social issues.
Super cool. Congratulations. We have another...
Sorry, this is what happens if you talk too long.
When a large-scale project such as the Torre Bicentenario fails due to political and social issues, what type of learning comes from such experience? I have to tell you that from a personal point of view, I was very, very disappointed when that happened, because I felt that we missed a great opportunity as an architect and as a Mexican. So what would be your thoughts on that?
I think naming a development building for anniversary itself is maybe a wrong thing, if you think about it now. Of course, we thought it was a very great honor that our building is charged, is a symbol for that. But, Bicentenario, it's not, you can never express the rich, exuberant culture here and your development by a single building. So I think the building as a monument, that was maybe the first wrong mistake that everyone made.
I agree. Multi-programming is a very characteristic in OMA projects. What is the most challenging part of proposing such intricate projects?
I think when I teach also students, the mixed use, like a multiple program, is becoming too much of a default. Not so many people are actually looking at the single program and refining that. And as a whole, you can actually start to investigate the potential of two different programs being next to each other, etc. But now everyone mixed use is an excuse of conceiving a building that is seemingly complex and just have multiple colors in a diagram. So we are being also very careful not to, because it's mixed use, to look at like as a whole, like some kind of incomplete programmatic structure, but really diving into the efficiency and also the nature of each program, which is, I think, very important.
Great. Do we have any questions from the audience? While they bring the microphone to pass it on there. How was the collaboration with such an artist like Mariama Brovic, one of the most important artists nowadays?
Artists gained a lot of power recently, as you know, through the capitalization of museums in the 90s. Of course, some artists gained a big power as much as the art institution. So working with an artist such as Marina, who had a lot of power, of course, gives a unique opportunity to look at art space as something that is more personal, but also maybe goes out of the boundary of white cube. Mm-hmm. So that it's very meaningful for us to collaborate with artists, not only successful ones, but in general with an artist.
We're really looking forward to see that project built in the near future.
Thank you.
Hi there. Okay.
Is there a question?
Sí, ¿quieres preguntar?
Sí, claro. Well, when you have a company this big, this large, which kind of problems you gotta face? Well, for us, this more important. Well, it's more rich, the information. And another question is, well, it's not a question. Which message you have for us, for young generation?
First question, yeah, bigger company. We're not that big though, like 300 plus, but yes, it's always a problem that there are more partners, meaning it's started to be difficult to critique each other's work and only refer to a financial state of the project. So that's the first step. A creative company becomes more corporate, I guess. But that's why OMA New York is trying to act as almost like a young firm to really not even using OMA's umbrella to really reinstate the energy of OMA so that people don't think OMA as a very established big firm. So, that's the way we are taking it. The message to young architects, well, I guess there are a lot of opportunities that are in the world, and I guess as I can only refer to myself, but to see other culture and understand the changes that are happening in the world, not necessarily to work there, but to be there and witness them. I think it's very important as our generation, but also to have a sense of entrepreneurship. I think architectural education is a little bit about putting, teaching too much of the knowledge, but not the knowledge deal with the new changes. So I think rather than, even if we study 5 years about museum, until you actually get a museum project, you really can't deal with it. So it's very important to learn how to react rather than to know, to not accumulate this knowledge, but to develop a tactics or develop an eye to capture the change and react to the change.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was awesome. No. It's perfect.
Nuestro siguiente conferencista es el artista Joep van Lieshout. Estudió en la Academia de Arte Moderno de Rotterdam, Atelier 63, en Haarlem y la Villa Arson en Niza. En 1995, Van Lieshout formó el grupo de estudio Atelier Van Lieshout en Rotterdam, Países Bajos, donde él diseña y fabrica sus obras. Ha obtenido reconocimientos internacionales por proyectos que exploran la relación entre el arte, la arquitectura y el diseño. Los temas recurrentes en su trabajo incluyen la autosuficiencia, el poder, la política y los temas más clásicos de la vida y la muerte. Ha exhibido sus piezas en museos y espacios públicos como el Centro Pompidou en París, el Maxi Museo en Roma y actualmente en el espacio CDMX en el bosque de Chapultepec. Una de sus obras más destacadas es Funky Bones, ubicada en 100 acres en el Parque de Arte y Naturaleza en Virginia Fairbanks. Demos por favor un aplauso a Joep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would first like to thank the City of Mexico, the Design Week and Design Capital for inviting me here. It has been a very warm and very professional event till now. And let me first start to tell you that I am indeed not an architect or designer. I am educated as a sculptor. Although from the beginning onwards I always make relation to functionality design or architecture, or using the language or make it indeed functional. And I will first give you like an overview of my work for the people who don't know my work, and then I will talk a little bit more specific about two projects I'm working on now. So this is La Besodrome, which was built in '95 with only one function, is to have sex along highways or other urban areas. So it had a retractable side, an entrance, and inside it was refurbished as a relaxation area. It had a bed, had a upholstered table, toilets, minibar, etc. Another piece around the same time is the master and slave unit. At that time, I don't accept and I would like to push borders that are there that I don't like. For example, with architecture, you need to have a building permit, you need to have all kinds of rules and requirements. So I wanted to make a kind of a flexible architecture that consisted of a master unit, that's the orange box, in the yellow box in the middle, which had 6 holes in it, and in these holes you could put the slave units, and the slave units were little architectural units with a specific function, like for example the bedroom, the kitchen, the toilet, and the office. And also put it on wheels, because in the Netherlands, if you put something on wheels, it's a kind of a different law. So I really wanted to break all the rules, because even the position towards the light, the position where you make the house, and even where is the bedroom and the kitchen, you could just change within one day. This is the clip-on, so I make many of this kind of add-ons of buildings. This is the Museum of Utrecht in the Netherlands, where the director of the museum asked for an extension to where he could sleep during the afternoons. So everything was made in my studio, and so I work very hands-on. So I make it myself with my group of people, and when it almost was finished, I thought, I'm missing something, there should be a little bit more light. So I had the skylights, and the way I do it normally is I take a pencil, and then I write on it, and I cut it, and I make the window. So I start with circles, squares, triangles, and nothing really was satisfying. Luckily, I had a car accident the week before, very late at night, somewhere on the highway. I will not tell more details. Basically, the only thing left over of my car were the floor mats. And then I said, yes, the floor mats, that is the size, that will be the shape of my skylights. So I always have this kind of ambiguous attitude or relation with design or architecture. So you could describe it as a kind of hate-love relation. I do also art in public space. This one is called Cascade, 2006, which was basically about scarcity of materials in the city. So you have all kind of oil barrels piled on top in a kind of a balanced imbalance. And there's people trying to climb up, trying to come on the top of all the barrels to be the master of the materials. But then you see all those figures, they try to climb up, but they also fall down. Sometimes they help each other to come up, and sometimes they push them down. So basically it's the struggle for life, struggle for economy, struggle for money, struggle for power. This is the Funky Bones, as said before. So I used the human skeleton to have a functional object. The Womb House from 2004. Many of the architects know, do you ever hear about Bauhaus? I think so, right? So they were kind of the inventors of the technical core, so industrialization of building, so a box which contains all the complicated things of a house, the toilet, the shower, the kitchen, the electricity and things like that. And I said, I want to have a new technical core, so that's why I made the Womb House, which is an enlargement of the womb. And then below the womb, is there a thing here? Oh, no. Below the womb, there is the heating system. On the back side, there is the kitchen. And in one ovary is the mini bar. And in the other ovary is the toilet. So basically, it's the machine that can make a house work. So once you plug the womb, and you're surrounded with 4 walls and a roof, you have a functioning house. This is the emergency exit. The bar rectum, so it's in the same series. So I didn't want to make a form follows function architecture. I didn't want to make a very complicated conceptual way of making art. I said, no, I just want to make a beautiful shape. I want to make a sculpture. I cut in some holes so we have the functionality. This is the human digestion system. It starts with the tongue and the gullet, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and then the large intestine becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So it gives space to a bar, or in this case, a holiday house. The wellness goal, there's a sauna inside. And the Darwin. So the Darwin is at Mexico City at this moment in front of Espacio CDMX in the Chapultepec Park. And it's an enlargement of a human spermatozoid. And it is about Darwinism, about how we humans reproduce ourselves. We have 1 out of the 150 million semen is able to fertilize an egg. But you can also see it in more wider context, like like in nature, the survival of the fittest. So the animal or the plant who is the most able to react on changing circumstances will survive. But there's also the same system applies to humans, to individuals in between each other. It also applies to companies trying to outsmart each other, or countries and civilizations. So here you meet this kind of something which is very natural, survival of the fittest, that made us, humans, what we are. So we are not kind of hunters, gatherers, monkeys, but we are civilized architects and designers. And but also comes very close to political systems that also strive to physical perfection. It's also a very suitable playground for children. And inside the Darwin there is a bed and a reception area. The bikini bar. So it was made as a meeting space for elderly people, so they could play pool and darts. And so basically I wanted just to take a beautiful shape and make it functional in some moment. So it is the only woman you can enter without permission. And even you can go all of you at the same time. Sorry, this should play. There should be a little video. That doesn't work. So it is. All the children are very happy. Oh, here it is. Where it is. I'm not sure if it's coming. So, 1, 2, 3. More recent, the original dwelling, kind of a cave dwelling, and I wanted to go back to the origin of our species, the origin of the human, which the cave was our first habitat. On the other hand, I wanted to make the ultimate form follows function architecture. Below here is the playground for children, there is the lounge, there's toilets, there's a bar, and on top is the playground for the adults. And why I say the ultimate form follows function, because I really carved the space around me. Said, okay, I need the space to sit, then you make like this, and you need this much space around you. If you stand, it's like this. If you have to go to the toilet, you go like this. And so basically it was actually just carving out the space that you need to use the space in a functional way. I also worked a lot of collaborations with architecture. For example, OMA in the early 90s, which was a big change for me because it gave me the possibility to work on a very large scale, because we did 10 bars, 500 toilets, stairwells, and all kind of stuff. So which was a big challenge for me as a young artist working by himself. But it was a very good step towards becoming a big studio. And now, since 20, 30 years, I work with a group of 20 people producing all the artworks ourselves. This is Bar Absence in Nantes, where I try to do everything absent, so no form, no concept, no shape, no ID, just a kind of a blob. So this is the area around my studio, which is an industrial area which was very dilapidated some years ago. So all the factories were empty, and I had the chance to buy many of the factories because nobody wanted to have them. Now it will be gentrified very soon. And then I thought, okay, since I'm the owner of the land, why not start to become a project developer and architect? So I designed a couple of buildings, the crane birds and the domesticator. So here you can see, this is my studio. The little villa there is part of the foundation that I made. I have a residency for artists. And the spaces behind that is storage and exhibition spaces. And so I said, okay, let's build something. So I said, okay, I will build a museum, and on top of the museum I will build a hotel and housing there. So everything was ready to be built, and then the head urban planner said, no, we can have this building because of decency reasons. And actually I'm very happy that he said, because now I cannot use this design anymore, and I want to make it bigger, much, much bigger and higher. I want to have 80,000 square meters and to make one of the highest buildings in Rotterdam. So I don't have a design yet, but next time I will be in Mexico, I will show you the designs. I make a lot of furniture as well, so I really don't like to accept any borders. I just want to do whatever I want. So this, for example, are lamps that are produced in very low editions for very exclusive clients. But they also make office furniture, which is available for very limited budgets. More furniture. More furniture. Independence. So I also like my independence a lot, and as you can see, from early onwards, I like to take the arms and fight for a better future. The autocrat, an important piece that I thought, okay, let's try to become independent, just live from the land, butcher the animals, live there with a couple of women, and be happy. So I made the autocrat in '97, which is basically a survival unit that can guarantee, that can give you the independence. So inside it's basically it's a big kitchen with a bed. And the concept about it is to make everything myself. except the raw material. So the stove, the water tap, all the furniture, all the different parts were handmade. So I refused to use anything which was pre-designed. Workshop for alcohol and medicines, to make alcohol out of fruit and sugar, and then mix it with herbs and special ingredients to make remedies and other kind of useful drugs. Workshop for weapons and bombs. In '98, before the big terrorism, I mean, when terrorism was still cool, I said, okay, let's make this mobile weapons and bombs workshop. Inside the container is a workshop where you have the tools and the chemicals readily available to make the weapons and bombs. The round thing is the bedroom of the freedom fighter, and the box in the middle is the place where you write to writing the manifestos. This inside. Around that time, I also got this commission from the Walker Art Center, which is a really excellent museum in America. And they wanted to have a mobile arts lab, so a kind of a mobile home that they could bring to the schools and to the underprivileged neighborhoods to bring the good word of the culture to the underprivileged people and the children, which of course was very useful and a very good idea. But still I was very corrupted, or I was not sure, because to me it was like that, you know, I'm just a designer. They ask me something to do and I fabricate it, and then they do the things that they have to do with it. And to me, it's a big difference between a designer and an architect. A designer makes something because it's better, or someone asked him, or because it's better for the world. And an artist basically makes those things that he wants to make and maybe nobody wants to have. So I almost said no, but of course I didn't. And I said I will do it under one condition, that I will make the trailer, but I will add also the black house. And the whole piece is called The Good, the Bad, the Good, the Bad and the Ugly. This is the good part, which has space for making exhibitions, have hands-on activities, has like a site that can open up for theater music performances, a place for the teacher to work and organize stuff. And then you go to the black house, which in first instance looks a kind of a nice romantic place, like a hunting shack or like a fishing house. But if you look a little bit further, you'll find a kind of a hidden laboratory where all kind of things could be made. And if you go to the attic, you'll find like a cage, a small bed, a desk. Well, you can imagine all kind of Silence of the Lambs activities happening there with the underprivileged people. So, the good, the bad and the ugly. And actually the good, the bad and the ugly is a theme of my work, which always is there. So there is the good message, but it's always a little bit corrupted with the bad message. Okay, at that time, 2001, I have to hurry up a little bit. AVLville, the free state that I started in the harbor of Rotterdam. And because I made so many bomb factories, hospitals, restaurants, energy plants, water purification system, I said I can make my own independent village where there is no rules, there is no law, and I can do everything what I want with the people working in my studio. The idea was that everyone working in the studio can build their own house and live there what they want. So there were no technical rules, there were no aesthetical rules. The only rule that was there, like, I mean, if you have to move it a little bit, you move it a little bit. So these are one of the houses that were created. We had the restaurant, the Hall of Delights, which was the idea to finance the Free State, because we didn't receive money and it was free accessible. We said, okay, let's sell a lot of beer. And we financed the whole state by that. But of course, since we didn't ask for any permits, we got problem with the government. And so they came to close the Free State after a couple of months, and then because we were not allowed to sell beer. And we also didn't have a building permit. So we found all kind of tricks to go around this rule. So we started selling bottles of wine in a small supermarket in the brown container, which was not allowed. Then we started making bottles, souvenir bottles, like regards from AVLville. Again, that didn't work. And then at the end, we made the floating bar, which in Rotterdam, apparently there is no rule. So as long as it floats, you can basically do whatever you want. This was the mini capsule hotel that we built for our guest, which is now owned by Brad Pitt. We make our own money, dedicated to heroic ingredients of AVL. The value of the money was related to beer, so 1 AVL is 1 beer, and was dedicated to weapons and bombs. The 5 was dedicated to alcohol and energy. The 25 to mobile homes and sex, and the 100 to food and nutrition. This was the farm that we had. It was called the Pioneer Set. So the whole farm could be dismantled and then transported inside a shipping container. And basically you could go anywhere in the world with a road and then start your own independent farm. So we make stables for all kinds of animals. So we try to make a utopian chicken coop and for the pigs and for the rabbits that disappeared. This was our farmer. And this was our free transport system. So we were on the border of Rotterdam. And for people who wanted to visit us, they could have free transport. But the consumption of alcoholic beverages was obliged. Of course, you can imagine there was a lot of parties and stuff going on. And there were many children born and, and dogs. And at a certain moment in October, 9 months after the opening, the whole street was clogged with cars of police, firemen, environmental control, animal protectionists. Basically everyone with a uniform or has a kind of power was there to close us down. We closed down, and again, I was very happy because, I mean, the work to be the mayor or the founder of a free state was not very artistic. I was very much talking to press and lawyers. So, and I'm an artist. So this was what I did after that, and I go a little bit further. This is a Sportopia. So a mixture between sports and sex and independence. The Disciplinator. So I wanted to create a system for humans. So there's 16 beds, 12 beds. 12 beds, 36 people, so they can sleep 8 hours each. And at the same time, the people can eat, they can work, and then there's 4 sinks, 2 toilets, and 2 showers. So basically, I wanted to create a society where everything was regulated. It was like the opposite of AVLville, you could say. The same with the Technocrat, which is about food and biogas and alcohol. So during the AVLville, I was the most interested in creating the infrastructure to find solutions for energy, to find solutions for clean water. And so I designed this biogas installation, which is the most functional or the most perfect way of cleaning excrements, because you make energy out of it. So I designed the whole thing, but in the meantime, it was already closed, the Free State. And I made this biogas installation for 1,000 people, because that is the optimum amount for an installation like this. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to stop this project because there will be no Free State, I said, no, I'm going to make this biogas installation. And I just find myself 1,000 participants, people, slaves, body, that produce the excrements in order that my biogas installation will work. So the idea was that people would be hooked up with tubes towards a vacuum tank which sucked out the excrement into the biogas installation. Then, of course, we needed to have a large installation to create food, to make food with the optimum gas production and for minimum costs. So it is about like using waste, using liquids and grains and stuff that you could feed to the people in order to produce the excrements. So I created like a factory for food. And then, in order that the people will not revolt, I said, okay, we need to make alcohol as well. So I made this alcoholator that produces 2,000 liters of alcohol a day. And that will also be distributed to the participants. And then the idea about this, that is you create a system of alcohol, food and excrements to create energy. And the energy itself was used to cook the food and to make the distillation of the alcohol. So it became like a kind of a closed system, like a circular economy with no goal at all. I mean, the goal maybe was to create this incredible complicated system in which the human was reduced to a small particle. And of course, this is a parallel to our society. Slave City. After this technocrat, I said, okay, we have to find a better way to earn more money because this technocrat is only costing money. So I said, okay, why not make an up-to-date, contemporary concentration camp where we have 100,000 men, 100,000 women. They all work, they all earn money. And with all this money, good things can be done. Education, culture, etc. And so I created this kind of zero footprint city based on this Excel sheet. You need about 60 square kilometers where you can be self-sufficient with organic food, self-sufficient with energy, self-sufficient with waste, and with the human being as well. So I created like this whole system and hundreds of buildings. I spent 3 years as an obsessive person trying to create the perfect thing. Also, human beings were recycled because not everyone was suitable to work in Slave City, only 6%. So the rest of the people were recycled for organs, blood, consumption meat, or compost. So this is the operation table. You can earn a lot of money with this. Don't underestimate. The human body is very, very valuable. And then this is the cutting tables. So in a way, I mean, and it's called Cradle to Cradle. I met the original guy, Brown, he's called, I think, a couple of times. The man who wrote the Cradle to Cradle book. And he was very enthusiastic about the project. He said, yeah, it's ridiculous that we don't do the Cradle to Cradle philosophy on our own bodies. So at least I have one fan in this project. So we have this power plant that is completely using renewable energy and waste. University for women and brothels. So people, the slaves, were not paid money because the money was going to be used to do good things. So, but they were granted privileges, sex, for both male and female. So if you would be a bad slave, you would be recycled. If you would be a good slave, you could visit one of the brothels. And if you would be a very good slave, you could go more often. And if you were an excellent slave, you could go to the luxury brothels. This one is the luxury brothels for females. So in reality, this is about 500 meters long. And then the male prostitutes, they enter from the tail, and then they go to these compartments. And between every compartment, there's a small hole. So, and you have to fight your way. You can see it below, like all the men fighting to win in order to go to the small hole, to go to the next compartment. And then they have to fight again to go to the next. So only the strongest, the most clever, the meanest guys could come to this place over there where they could recover, gain strength, eat, do sports, to have a final gladiator battle in the arena in the head of the sperm, where the female clients were waiting to have sex with them in the little cubicles. So it has to do a lot with Darwin again. The Museo Jester, the museum, would be the biggest museum in the world in the shape of a human digestion system. So down here, this is the door where the visitors can enter. So it's a huge, complicated buildings with all kind of different departments. This is the turbine hall. This is the contemporary painting department. Antiquities and hotels. And again, library, restaurant and brothel. So in a way I wanted to create this museum which is like a casino. When you enter a casino in Las Vegas, you walk in, you look around and you cannot find anymore where you came from. So it's a kind of a closed system. So I wanted to create a museum where once you go in, you cannot escape. You have to live there, you have to eat there, you have to have sex there, there's no way to go back out of this thing. So, the project, which was more recent, is called the New Tribal Labyrinth. And the New Tribal Labyrinth is basically a reaction on globalization. So and I speak to I speak we as Dutch people or as Europeans, are very used to have the production, industrial production, done in those areas where it's the cheapest, in China. And so industry is not really part of our society, and we became a civilization of technocrats, bureaucrats, service industry people. And I feel this is not correct. I mean, I feel a society should have everything. They should have industry, they should have heavy industry, they should have agriculture, they should have prisons, crazy peoples, prostitutes, people who don't want to adapt themselves, artists, all in the same society. And what I see now, what I feel a little bit, is that our society becomes a kind of lifestyle, consumer situation where everything is about consumption. So I was imagining that maybe in the future there would be a new utopia, a new society where people, they come together and form a kind of a tribe and dedicate their lives again to making things, to industrial production, like the sawmill, which is the orange thing in the middle, which is then propelled in the back by a treadmill where 16 people can walk rounds to make this machine work. And then on the little trailer there, you can put a tree trunk. You can put a tree trunk and cut beams and planks in order to build the new society, to build the houses, to build the factories, to build the shop, to build the churches again. So it's very much about dedicating your life to, here's the treadmill, to producing things. So on one hand, it's a dystopia because, I mean, it's heavy work, sweating in order to get some wood. On the other hand, it's a utopia because, I mean, you are there able to make something. The whole sawmill is decorated with artworks, mirrors and plants. Later, I extended the piece, so the treadmill is in the right. I extended it with a cheese maker, a cheese factory and milkery. So once you start cutting the wood, the whole machinery is working, so then you can start to milk the cows and make the cheese. So basically, it is like, if you want to cut the wood, you also have to produce tons of cheese, which you all have to eat and then sleep in this thing here. So I was very much interested in man and machine, like this little loom, which is like a little cage in which you can sit down and then you connect your hands and your feet with all the mechanical parts of the loom in order to weave a piece of fabric. Also about the man and machine is the blast furnace. And the blast furnace is the machine, the installation where you produce steel, and which is very, very important for what we are now. I mean, without steel, there was no industrial revolution, there is no advancement, there would be no education, there would be, the politics would be completely different. So because of the blast furnace, we are what we are. But nowadays, I mean, steel is produced elsewhere, and it's not important anymore. So I wanted to make my own steel. Treadmills, and all the equipment necessary to produce steel. This thing over there is to put the coal and iron ore inside the blast furnace. And if you look well, you see in between the blast furnace, you see a kind of a settlement. Furniture, kitchen, bedrooms, places where you can play cards, places where you can eat, where you can enjoy yourself. So basically it was like that the man, the tribe, the people of the tribe that decided to produce the steel, they say, we want to live inside the blast furnace. We want to sleep in between the dust, the sound, and the smell. So we want to be one with the factory. We want to be one with the machine. Around the sculpture, there were around this installation there were some sculptures placed, like the exploded view in the left background, which is basically all the human intestines, the lungs, the heart, the liver, the kidneys, all the major arteries. So, and of course, it's direct relationship with all the tubes and containers of the blast furnace. The horn of plenty, a very strong, healthy woman with a dish with many children, and spermatozoids swimming around the blast furnace and more everywhere. And then there was the Papa Mama lamp. So it was a lamp built of a womb and a penis with a little baby inside, but also served a function as a lamp. So this is very much I wanted to make a parallel between the cycle of life of human and the cycle of life of iron ore, and then the sarcophagus. So from the beginning, from fertilization till death, a combination with the factory. Oh, yes, and the circular economy is back again, because on top of the blast furnace there's the toilet that, and the waste is directly integrated in the system, making steel out of it. So we had all this idea to make the factories and machines, and then we said, okay, let's work with it, let's do the industry. So we start forging, and we made a cup, a blood bowl, out of one sort of piece of steel. And we made a machine to melt iron and to cast iron stuff, and to cast bronze and aluminium. So it was really heavy industry. And this is one of the products. So we worked with a group of 3 blacksmiths for 2 full days in order to create just one cup. But this is a cup that will always survive. The hagioscope. So parallel to all the industries, I made farms, and this is called the hagioscope. It's a representation of the farm of the year 0, like a kind of a cave farm. You could say it's the farm of Joseph and Maria. But this is the kitchen, the stable, the kitchen and the bedrooms, and the constructivist carpenter's workshop. The insect farm, a farm of the near future, or the present even. Insects are high protein, vegetarian, half vegetarian food that have a very small footprint. So they use very little water and food and energy in order to grow. So this could be the food of the future. Or the food processor from the far future. I wanted to create a farm which is not a farm, which is not an organism, which is not a machine, but something in between, like something that we create with genetic manipulation and biotics in order to make a machine that creates food out of waste. Or this cow of the future, which, if you know about cows, you have cows to produce meat and you have cows to produce milk. There's different animals. So why should you, and my idea is like, if you want to have milk, why should you have a cow? Why cannot you make the cow of the future, which is a cow that is genetically manipulated and only has the things needed to produce the milk, a heart, a lung, the intestines, the stomachs, and another. So it's better for the animal because it doesn't have a conscience. It's better for nature because it doesn't use that much energy and food. The tribe also needs new rituals, new religions, rituals for fertility. But on the other hand, what I really like about utopia, that the utopia has two sides. The constructivist side, the one that wants to go forward, the modernist utopia that includes machines to make a better world. And on the other hand, the expressionist utopism that goes back to the origin of people, to go back to the man as an animal. So this contrast really inspired many of the works. So, what I'm working now is called cryptofuturism. And it's the follow-up. It's related to the new tribal labyrinth and to everything before, but it's a little bit different. So this is a sculpture which is called the Domesticator, which also caused a little bit a problem when we exhibited in Paris, in front of the Louvre, and then it was... The director said, no, we cannot have it here. And then it was adopted by the Pompidou Museum. The good thing was that it got like so much press and attention that which we otherwise would never have had. So it has been in all the newspapers in all the world. But the Domesticator is not about a man having sex with a dog or a pig or whatever they see in it. No, the Domesticator is about domestication. And domestication is the process that humans have, how humans control and influence the world. It started with agriculture. So agriculture was very important because people could settle down, they could start building houses, they could start make pottery. It was the beginning of design, you could say, and the beginning of how we humans became humans. And this domestication process continued in all ages. At a certain moment you had the Industrial Revolution. At a certain moment we are able to conquer diseases. And this domestication process continues nowadays. It's the way how we will use energy, how we will use genetic manipulation, how we'll use big data and robots to improve our life, to guarantee the existence of the human race in the future. On the other hand, all those new technologies have a strong ethical part in it. So we don't know exactly what will be the result of the individual freedom of big data. We don't know the result of genetic manipulation for our food or even for the human being. So it's very much about a kind of hypocrisy that we're all blind looking forward into new technologies. On the other hand, old taboo like bestiality stay intact. By the way, this piece has been for 3 years in Germany, where it was apparently not a problem at all. And this summer it will go to Amsterdam, where it will be exhibited for half a year, and then we'll make a big programmation around it with art exhibitions, dance, performances. We'll do the foundry, so it will be like a whole village. Well, more sculptures that have to do with domestication, the milkman, the statistocrat, the midwife. And here, in the cryptofuturism, I also like to look into finding solutions for the future, using renewable energy, using circular economy to save our world. But I also like to look a little bit further than that, like what can we also discover or research nuclear energy as being a zero carbon dioxide, climate neutral way of generating abundant electricity. And with abundant electricity you can create food, you can create water, you can create oxygen. So that's why I started to study the subject, and this is the first nuclear reactor that we designed ourselves, that can be made with simple materials and would provide the energy for 50,000 households. So cryptofuturism also has to do with the Italian futurists. And the Italian futurists, they started in 1908 with Marinetti, a famous artist, writer, and he wrote the Futurist Manifest. And the futurists were very, very interesting people. They were kind of anarchists. They provoked everything. They wanted to change everything, and they didn't accept, just like me, any borders between art, design, film, food, everything. And they were also obsessed by technology. And so in that time, cars, planes, film, this kind of things that they were really obsessed by. And because they thought, like, with this new technology, we will change the world and we'll make a new utopia and all the people will be happy. And of course we know that that's not the case always, like modernism proved. On the other hand, they wanted to break with everything in the past. So they want to break with aristocracy, with religion, with all kind of old systems they had in Italy. And they also thought the way to get there faster is to use violence. So to have a revolution, to have a war, to have an uprising, this will, bring us faster to our utopia, to our goal. So they went to the First World War, and they thought this will be a short war, and after this war everything will be better. But it wasn't a short war, and about 50% of all the futurists, they died in the trenches in the Dolomites, fighting the Austrians. And they said, okay, we become fascist. They saw like Mussolini as the guy that was like having the similar ideas about changing to the future, using technology, breaking with the past. And of course, this was the wrong decision again, because fascism was not really desirable and not really functional and disappeared for a large part. And to me, I am interested in this futurism, and I make this crypto-futurism, that means like the hidden or the secret futurism, because I feel we are in a similar time as the time just before the First World War. It's a time with a lot of new technologies, like then, with robotization, big data, genetic manipulation, or what I already said. And there's also a huge increase, at least in Europe and in many parts in the world, of fascism and populism. So basically, we are playing with fire. And that's what I like to do, playing with fire. So I created new leaders, which are absent, which is a man on a donkey hollowed out, a man on a donkey that became a sculpture, the philosopher, and death. The end of everything. That has to do with this transition, from how do we make this transition from now to the future? How do we go to a new world? Do we do this in a very slow, democratic way, or are we going to challenge it and going to speed it up? So that's why I made these machines to recycle products, to recycle things, or to destroy things, like this Bronco, which is the English word for a young untamed horse. Inside the machine that I made myself is a hydraulic press that pushes with 100 tons downwards, and I mean it's the weight of 100 cars piled on top of each other. So basically everything that you hang inside the Bronco, like tree trunks or whatever product, will be destroyed or will be recycled. So also here, with the end of everything, it's a very thin line between the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because are we destroying bad products? Are we recycling products in order to make better products? Are we destroying everything we have in order to build a new utopia, a new world out of the ashes of the bad old world? Another machine that I made is called the hammer, which is basically a winch with a big, heavy piece of steel attached to it. Then it's hoisted to the ceiling, and then with a special mechanism, it falls down. And whatever you put down there will be destroyed. And then I decided to make all different kind of hammerheads. So a hammerhead that can cut a piece, or a hammerhead that can make a hole in something, or just a hammerhead that flattens things. So here you see a little compilation of the recycling of a dishwasher, or a computer, or books, or more books. Now, so these, this is a project that will be finished next month. It's called the Hammer House, and basically is a big tower in which you can put a very, very heavy weight to destroy, recycle things. And inside there's a house where the hammer master will live. So the hammer master, the one who destroys, the one who recycles, also wants to become one with the machine of destruction. Flying Dutchman, similar purpose, made to flatten things. And I want to make a movie about the Flying Dutchman, which is about a man that wants to destroy the world, but he will not succeed, and he always keeps on driving around, finding for stuff to destroy, but he doesn't succeed. The cage. This is basically what I did. I made a cage, which was also a house. So inside the cage there was a bed, there was a sink, there was a toilet, and there was a bed. And with this hydraulic equipment, this very, very heavy equipment, I push the cage apart to destroy it, you could say, to be free of all the limitations. And then after the cage was destroyed, I bent it back, I welded it again, and then destroyed it again. So it was a process of destruction and reconstruction, about responsibility towards the society and personal freedom. So this is what left over of the little house, which now functions as a peace and public space and a playground for children. The stew maker, I made a lot of other machines to destroy things. This is a machine where you can put products here, and then it will be solved by very strong oxidizers and acids. With this, all this stuff being recycled, I will make sculptures and sculptures and sculptures and sculptures and sculptures and sculptures and furniture, lamps and cabinets and more lamps and more lamps. So basically, on one hand, it is the ultimate recycling, making, or the ultimate destruction, creating a new utopia. So, this was the last slide. My time is over. That's very good. What can I say about this is a designer normally finds a solution for something. It answers a question. And artists, they are not giving solutions. An artist confuses people. An artist maybe asks questions. And while you are going to ask questions, I have a little film that I hope can be on the background. Yes? Oh.
Thank you, Joep, very much. We're a little over time. Thank you very much. Les recuerdo, por favor, regresar aquí a las...
May I remind you that we have to be back at 3:50. We are going to have some other speaker, Montgomery Schumacher, resuming our program this afternoon. Thank you.
Oh, no questions? If someone has a question? Sorry? No, there's no questions? Okay. Yeah, I hear you. Yes, please. Yes, question, you can ask.
Is there any particular characteristic of the Mexican culture that would inspire your work?
Absolutely. The question was if there's any aspect of Mexican culture that inspires me. Yes, it does a lot. I really love Mexico, and I also love the pre-Columbian culture, although it's very many things are unknown about it, but especially the idea of the rituals and the cannibalism and the sacrifices is something that is really interesting to me. And as you could see in my Cradle to Cradle, the contemporary Mexico, I think it's very interesting. I mean, it's a country, it's a society with a lot of contrast, from extreme wealth and sophistication to poverty, but also a lot of people who still have strong roots with their pre-Columbian roots. And I think this is something you should nurture and something you should protect always, and not get confused by trying to become a new industrial, or say, like a society like the rest of the world. So keep your origins, I would say. Other question? Sorry, I cannot hear you.
I normally have a loud voice, but... So I was saying that your work like Slave City or AVL Village is a sensibilization tool towards sustainability, or examples of how should we live our lives towards a more collaborative and circular economy habit. So what is the government response or citizen response to your work, and is it on your intentions to inspire or push the development of new building policies towards sustainability, social policies, or new social rules of living our lives?
That was a very difficult question. But is the question if my free state was sustainable as well, or what? Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Sorry. So my question is, like, do you try, in your objectives with your artwork or all your pieces, is there any objective to push public policy making or public decisioners to develop new social ways of living a sustainable lifestyle?
Yes, I mean, I'm very dedicated in creating a better world, although in my work I will show the contrast, and basically I show a mirror to the society. I mean, if we continue like this, this and this might happen. So I'm not really, let's say, creating solutions. I I'm making the soil, I'm giving the conditions for people to create. I'm giving the counter movement. And I think in society, in design and science, people are very often forget about what is the real important thing. So sometimes they are too much thinking about something which is not that important. So in a way, I create confusion in order to make a tabula rasa, to make a new start, and to think what is really important. You have 36 seconds, so one last question.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, there's a question. Say it again?
What is one dream of yours you want to build on the horizon?
Oh, what's the dream, what I would like to build? I would like to build a huge building, which is a machine that creates possibility, a machine that creates money in order to make my dream. And my dream is to make as many beautiful artworks as possible. So to become independent of, let's say, the art world, and just make this crazy dream that nobody wants and I still want to realize.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nos vemos, por favor, de regreso a las 3.
So let's be back at 3:50. Remember to be back earlier to gather your seats. Thank you and bon appétit.